So we're going to get started pretty quickly here. My name is Dr. LaShonda Cunningham, and I am the Services Supervisor here at the Urbana Police Department, one of many hats that I wear. I have the pleasure of introducing our first panel speaker, Mr. Michael Turner. He is a Urbana High School class of 2025, and he's going to talk to us about a message for families, the legacy we carry. Michael, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. Today I will be sharing an original piece titled The Legacy We Carry. What if the legacy we carry ain't liberation, but the chains we drag from one generation to the next? What if 9-year-olds are still learning how to hold a gun before they learn how to hold a conversation? What if we teach our sons to fight first and our daughters to settle for pain? What if the loudest voices in our culture ain't leaders, but deceivers with a beat? What if we clap for hustlers, but stay quiet for scholars? What if we post more RIPs more than we post report cards? What if the legacy we carry is arguing over shoes while the enemy continues to run over our neighborhoods? What if we memorize every lyric, but forget every reason our ancestors died for? What if we let slavery end on paper, but keep it alive in our minds? What if we escape the plantation just to build prisons that operate the same way? What if we broke Jim Crow's chains, but kept his mindset? What if we march against police brutality, but brutalize each other daily? What if we spend more time and money on clothes than we do on any type of book? What if we wear Black excellence like a trend, but never act like it means something? What if we sell pain as profit and call that the culture? What if Juneteenth is just a party to us and not a funeral for the freedom we keep killing? What if the systems don't even have to oppress us anymore because we've learned how to do it to ourselves? What if we know our history but never apply it? What if we can't say their names but can't talk to certain names in our own family tree? What if we celebrate MLK one day and forget to love like him the next? What if the names on our shirts are dead because we never learned how to live? What if we are the weight that the next generation has to survive? What if the legacy we carry ain't greatness, but grief? Thank you.
Excellent job. I am so proud of Michael. He is a phenomenal young man. He is headed to DePaul University this fall on a full ride scholarship. And will be studying education, music, what is it? Special ed and elementary education. So we're so proud of you. Thank you for that phenomenal speech. Are we going into the next segment? Okay. All right, we're going to keep it moving, and we will have our very own Deputy City Clerk, Raphael Cho. Where's Raphael? Not that part?
Go back to Mark.
Oh, go back to you, okay. And we're bagging up. We will have our very own Tom Unzinger come to us to talk to us about Juneteenth Among Us. Round of applause for Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, LaShonda. What we want to do here, folks, is an activity in the room. And this is really as a way to see about our own diversity among us and how we can learn from each other in a hurry. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is to stand up, first of all, if you are able to, and look around the room and find somebody in this room, not only that you have not met yet, but I want you to look for something very specific. I would like you to look for somebody who might be older or younger than you, somebody who might be a different gender than you, somebody who might be a different race than you. And I'd like you to try to pair up right now, and we'll see if we have an even number, and if we don't, we'll go with 3 in one of the groups. But let's just see if we can do pairs right now among each group here. And feel free to slide the chairs around as you need, or be in the hallways. Either way, we're just going to see what happens. All right. This way. Now, if you don't have a perfect, complete difference, that's okay. We're just going to see what we can learn. Okay. Now that you are together, we're going to give you this opportunity. These are the questions I want you to ask each other. Find out each other's names. Find out where you are from right now. And so let's do it this way. One person goes first, and we're going to talk to each other for about 3 minutes each. Questions like, where are you from? Not only your name, maybe something about the educational background, but then some questions that are key about Juneteenth. When did you learn about Juneteenth? And how does it impact your family? And if your answer is new or different or unusual, that's okay. Now, after you have gone for 3 minutes with one person, switch partners, and then we will see about the next part of the exercise, okay? But interview each other right now. Thank you. Okay, if you'd take your seats, if you would, please. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Now comes the surprise. After this session, we have a session all about communication and listening. So here's what we're going to have you do. We'd like 2 people who talked with each other to come up, and the other person is going to introduce you. And here's the hard part. I met with Chief Dade. If Chief Dade were to come up here when we get to our part, I'm going to introduce Chief Dade as if I am Chief Dade. Chief Dade won't be able to talk while I'm introducing him. So who's ready to be bold today and try this experiment out? Do I need to? Chief Dade's ready to go. Yeah? Okay, you want to go first? You too, good, okay. Good, we'll do that. Okay, so here's what we have you do. The person who's going to talk will stand at the microphone, and the person being introduced will sit right here, okay? Now,
and as I am Lynn.
Rather than say your name, you say I am, and you become her right now on the spot.
Okay, hello everyone. I am Lynn. I am originally from Chicago and moved down here in 2007 to attend the University of Illinois in history. And since then, I've raised kids and become a member of the community and try to reflect that history of Juneteenth, especially with my kids, because we celebrate 4th of July and also want to incorporate Juneteenth, and that's rich history, especially with that background and our family. Did I do okay? Yeah.
Good afternoon. I am Grace, and I am originally from Dallas, Texas. I moved to Illinois with my family, and then I moved back to Dallas when I was in the 8th grade. I am now back here in Illinois, and I work for the city of Urbana.
You want- Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Unzinger. I am living now in my 14th state. I've moved all around. I worked from place to place, sometimes doing temporary work, and worked as the jobs, how I felt. The jobs took me from place to place, in the military as well. So some of my moves came because I was on a military basis, and now I'm here in the city of Urbana and work here for the city. I think I forgot something.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chief Damon Dade, and I am the firefighting chief for the city of Urbana. I was born in Illinois, but I grew up in Minnesota and have been in the fire service for some time. You may know me as somebody who likes to pursue hobbies. One of the hobbies I have pursued in recent years is an interest in rodeo. But I came through to the firefighting service in a strange way. I was simply looking for a job. I left college because I wanted to be able to support my future wife, and she had some children before we met. And we decided time for me to go to work. So first I became a welder, and I did that for 5 years. I thought I was going to go into being a trash hauler with my father-in-law, but right before that, one of my cousins said, let's take the firefighter's test. Only one of us became a firefighter, though. Okay? Would anybody else like to go? All right. Well, you see the point, and we'll stay closer to on time because we do have a session that is going to be ready to go here in a few minutes. We'll take about let's see, how close are we to 4 o'clock? We're right at 4. So why don't we take maybe a 7 or 8 minute break, and we'll get the panel set up, and then we'll go into our next session, okay? Thank you. Just want to say, as you remember these things about each other, we're a very diverse nation, and that's to our benefit. Rather than people trying to divide us and to create all kinds of mountains of hatred and distrust, we just built some community here in this room. And let's live that way all throughout our lives, okay?
Okay, we're going to transition to the last segment for the Juneteenth program. All of the festivities at the Wellness Center will be rescheduled, I am told, maybe during one of the neighborhood nights. So look for that information. That information will be forthcoming. Next up, I am introducing another one of our very own, Raphael Cho, and he's going to lead this phenomenal panel that we have up here for our next segment. So I'm going to turn this over to Raphael.
Thank you, LaShonda. All right, thank you for joining us. All right, so let me introduce the members of our panel. Thank you for showing up today and agreeing to, be here. All right, so first off, I'll introduce Damon Dade. He is our fire chief for the City of Urbana's fire department, and he has completed 25 years in the fire service and joined the City of Urbana in 2021. He serves on 2 boards with appointments from the governor, the State of Illinois' 911 Advisory Board, and the Firefighters Medal of Honor Committee. The chief is also a member of the board of directors on the United Way of Champaign County. And next on the panel, we have the wonderful Karen Sims. She is the executive director of the Trauma and Resilience Initiative, a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded 6 years ago in Champaign County. She has a master's degree in marriage and family counseling, and she has a license in mental health counseling. Up next, we have Moe McClendon. He grew up in the St. Louis area, and after high school, he came to Urbana-Champaign to continue his education, and this spring he received his bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Illinois. He is not through living in this area, though. Earlier this month, he started new classes in order to pursue a master's degree. So, congratulations. Up next, we have Chandra A. Somerville. She is a cultural and linguistics competence coordinator. She works with both the Champaign County Mental Health Board and the Developmental Disabilities Board. All right. So what's going to happen for this panel? We're going to first have an opening question for everyone, and then we're going to go through a demonstration just to challenge our listening and understanding skills. And then we're going to have some reactions to that demonstration, and then we'll have some time to ask a few questions to the panel. All right. So for this opening question, just want brief answers, a little around 1 minute each. And so I'd like for each of you to share one thing you think is important to communicate to a young person today about Juneteenth. And you can begin, Fire Chief Dade.
So I guess, if I had to speak to the young people, I would tell them to just be proud of the progress that we made as a people, progress that we made as a country. The concept of justice is inherent. Everybody, it's natural to think that everything should be fair, but through the perseverance and hope that our ancestors, held out for, we were able to make this progress. And so, and it was an ongoing commitment to the development of pursuing, the behavioral changes that's needed in order to see the justice and the fairness come about. It doesn't just happen. You have to work at it. So I would just tell them to be proud of the progress and that work has to continue.
Thank you. All right, Karen.
So I have a couple things that I would say briefly. One is to remind people, because when we think young people, we're thinking all young people. So to remind people that history is messy and complicated, and that the only way that we can address history is to sort of face it and deal with it. So part one, so this is not just a Black people event, it really is an all people event. And two, because we're all in this bucket together, and two, Juneteenth to me at its core really is about the exploitation of labor. And if we think about policies and practices that have always existed to keep people from having a voice, from being free, from being liberated, we need to be aware of them and to call it out when we see them. And those structures haven't gone away, right? So a group of people were exploited as a labor class for a really long time and not given voice and agency. And when we see that happening, we all should go, ouch, and to be wanting to dismantle those structures so that we can all be free, because if it's going to be about liberation, it really should be about liberation.
Thank you. Moe?
That was great. As a young person myself, because I can't really relate to all of my peers around me, I would say the first thing is to not lose hope. I think because of what's going on right now, there's such like a depressing cloud above us where we can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I would like for us to just really focus and remember that our ancestors went through worse. And because of them, we can have the confidence that we can do the same. And to don't feel like we don't belong in certain places. Because as I talk to my peers, I get a lot of people doubting themselves, feeling like they don't belong. And I want them to have confidence in themselves and to realize that we are powerful, and we are more powerful as we are unified together. And I think that's what Juneteenth really reminds us all, is that it's not to look at the past and see what happened. It's to look at the future and compare to the past and see how far we came. So, and I think that hope is very important to hold on to.
Thank you.
One of the things that I am noticing is a lot of, I guess, anger around finding out about history after it has happened and that it's too late. And if I could speak to a young person, when you learn it, it's yours. No one can ever take away what you now know and what you have learned. And 2 years went by. And that's how Juneteenth actually happened, which is kind of late. And I could have imagined there were some people mad about that and angry that we found out late. Well, you found out when you found out. Now that you know this opportunity, what will you do with it? Sometimes, as humans, and this is humanity, when we find out something afterwards, we kind of get angry or lose hope or lose sight of that. Now we know, now we can do things differently.
Thank you. All right. So thank you for all those answers. Very thoughtful. And so, Chief Dade, you brought along a demonstration for us about listening and hearing and how we react to one another while we communicate.
So I'm gonna pass out a few things here. Some of you in the crowd are gonna get a piece of paper that has some information on it, and I ask you to just keep it to yourself. And some people are gonna get a blank piece of paper, and then we're gonna listen to something. I'll be back. Now, what we're going to do, I'm going to play a recording. And what I'm going to ask you to do is listen to the recording, write down what you hear. After you write down what you hear, I'd like you to write down what it brings to your, what imagery or where it takes you, okay? Y'all can hear that? What? Yeah. Yeah, you guys can open that, but don't show it to the other people. So you just keep it to yourself.
Laurel. Laurel. Laurel.
You guys hear that?
Laurel. 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 Laurel.
All right. So write down what you heard. And then also write down what that means to you. Whatever you heard, what is it? What do you understand that to be or mean?
Okay, so once everyone's had a chance to write it down, we'll first hear from our panel members about what they heard, and then we can gather some reactions from the audience about what they heard as well, and can see if it was anything that hasn't been mentioned.
So I'll go ahead and speak first. With that recording, I heard the word laurel, and so for me, the imagery that I have is either the comedian Laurel and Hardy, or the philosopher Laurel. So, that's just what I heard, and that's what comes to mind for me.
So I heard moral, and so when I think about morals, I think about values, cultures, traditions, a set of guiding that could be religious, cultural, and philosophical ideas that help you figure out how to live your life and live in community together.
Yeah, I heard moral also, and I was thinking about maybe how Juneteenth can be connected to the morals of today compared to the past. But yeah, that's all I got.
I heard audible vocal exercises, and I was not able to clearly understand what was heard. I actually have more questions.
I think we all do.
All right, so so that is a good, a variety of things that we've heard from that recording, and so how about we, anyone in the audience, would they like to share about, what you may have heard? And okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share from the audience?
That's it? Okay, that's good enough. So I think some people don't want to say what they maybe heard. So we did this. She said she had questions. So we heard Laurel off of one recording, which is a comedian or philosopher. We heard a couple people who say that they heard morals and what that meant to them. We had somebody who said they couldn't understand, so it just caused them to have more questions. We heard eerie, which was creepy or scary, or a hometown. And then we heard Tammy, which was creepy movie or just an unpleasant sound. So the point of this exercise is that, when we're talking about Juneteenth and we're talking about things that can be racially or emotionally charged, our disposition, part of the experiment with the people who had the paper was that they had words already in front of them. So if you have something where you're kind of prepped, you may have been led to hear one of the things that was on the paper, or when one person heard Yuri or eerie, your brain, what does it take you to? My hometown. So the point is, if off of one recording we can hear so many different things and our brains went this way, how do we start to have a conversation about education, taxation, reparations, anything that we're going to talk about? Because we don't even know where everybody's starting. We assume everyone understands where we're starting, but we have no clue of where their brain, their imagination, their intellect has taken them before we even start. So if we don't set the platform of what we're going to talk about, if we don't get questions answered so that we all have a common understanding of what we're going to talk about, and then a finish line to where we would like to complete that conversation, the things we want to talk about are virtually impossible. So if we're not going to have patience and understanding and be tolerant, these issues can never be solved, because we're going to come in with an agenda and you didn't hear me and Carla said it, what the heck are they talking about? And we leave the place more confused and upset than we came in, with great intentions. And then we leave so disconjointed because we didn't understand that we needed to start on a common ground. And I want to share something, because just to let you know, it's not a trick. Just pass those out. I'm gonna pass out something. So just, you guys can take one and pass it around. So the illustration that we're looking at with the squiggly lines on top shows that the recording actually did say Laurel. But the word Yanny, if you look, has a similar waveform. And when you look down below, it's hard to see, but if you really look between those red lines, the waveform just inches up like an inchworm for Laurel. And for Yanny, it does too, but it's just a little more faint. So based off of how you hear sounds, because this tripped me out. I understood that we have people who are colorblind. I understood that we have people who are hearing impaired, but I didn't know that we actually heard the same sound differently. And so because of that, and because we only hear the vibrations coming off of my vocal cords, how your ears perceive those, you may actually say something and somebody really didn't hear the word that you said. And how many times have you had a conversation where somebody said, I can't believe you said that. Like, said what? And then they say something like, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. And when you're angry, you don't back down. You know what you heard, and you're going to hold them to it, and this is that. But you may not really have heard what you thought you heard, and it's based off of science. So because of that, and moving forward in the theme of Juneteenth, just making sure everyone understands, like, we have to be tolerant, we have to be patient, we have to take things sometimes at face value that maybe somebody didn't hear you, let alone understand you. So that was the point of this experiment. All right, hold on. I got to throw this in there now just to mess with you guys. So Michael Jackson's song, we're going to be starting something. At the end of that, y'all know the catch. Mama say, mama sa, mama kusa. Mama say, mama sa, mama kusa, right? What if I told you he was saying, mama said I'm a sing and not gonna stop. Mama said I'm a sing and not gonna stop. That's the actual lyrics. Who would believe me? You believe me because it makes sense in our head. He actually was saying, mama say, mama sa, mama kusa. And when his family asked him, Michael, what does that mean? He said, it doesn't mean nothing. I just want to hear people sing it and see what they say I'm saying. And it was, so I don't know that he was socially ahead of kind of these things, but he just understood if people don't know what you're saying, they will make something up. And so they said it was his inside joke at concerts to see what would people be saying back to him in the concert. He just wanted to know what other lyrics people would make up. So just understand, sometimes we are not hearing what we think we hear. And if prompted to say you're hearing something else, I can see that. And if it's a trusted individual, like your grandparents and your family members who maybe take you down a road of lack of information or just prejudice and different things, it becomes really easy to adopt those morals and standards that we were raised with because we trust the source. So do your own research, look back at things like he was saying, the young people are feeling, hopeless these days. And we just have to make sure, and like she was saying, angry when you now hear the truth, But anyway, that was it. So thank you.
Thank you for that demonstration. Thank you. And thank you for all that, Chief Dade. So I believe we are about halfway through our time, and so we'll have some time for a few questions. And so I'll say, with that exercise in mind, let me ask the panel, how can we begin to approach having these conversations and maybe understanding that people may be coming in with frustrations from before you even began speaking. And so how do we begin diffusing that and starting a dialogue that we can use to put our energy toward getting a better understanding of one another, moving toward liberation?
Okay, it's a couple of things, and I'm actually on a journey myself. One of the things that I have done, I worked with young people for over 20 years. And young people, like they cuss, they're going to use cuss words. It's a thing. What I've noticed, though, is how adults like come unhinged when they hear children and youth cuss. And so what I chose to start doing, because at one point I was there because I felt entitled as an adult that you don't use cuss words around me now that I'm a grown up. But what I started doing is, what are they actually saying? So instead of listening to or paying attention to words, tone and delivery, I began to focus on what they were actually telling me and what they were actually communicating. So the first thing that I had to do was actually check in with my own bias and begin to see what is going to make me come undone because of what I'm hearing or what I'm actually hearing. So even within this exercise, I was checking in with my bias because my grandmother, who had an 8th grade education, told me you speak loud enough and clear enough so that people can hear you in the back. That is a bias. So when someone gets on a microphone and they're not speaking clearly, I get very frustrated because you're expecting me to hopefully respond. So instead of getting frustrated because I'm aware of my biases, I just begin to ask clarifying questions. When it comes to race and beginning to talk about racism, one of the things that I've actually done to make it more palatable for me to facilitate challenging conversations is I begin to assess values. Once I begin to assess one's values, I can then kind of begin to speak to who they are instead of maybe hard topics. And so when it's time for me to land the hard topic, it's a bit easier because we have assessed and identified values in the space. And so that is one way that I began to have the ability to have hard conversations. And I have very hard conversations with people. And also, I myself actually value humans and humanity. If you do not value humans and humanity, no matter where they actually are, then you're going to always be presenting with your own views, your own worldview, and perspective as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For me, my personal experience, I always try to come from a place of empathy. And like she said, first check if like they care about humanity first before you even have the conversation, because if they don't, it's not worth your time. But most of my personal experience with people, they come from ignorance. They're fed the wrong propaganda, and they don't really understand true history or what happened in the past. So what I try to do is inform them with their own ignorance. You know, I ask them the questions that they don't know, so then they begin to question themselves and what they learned and how they learned it. And I will see if they're able to admit their own faults or at least ask questions back. So to let you know you're interested. So if a person has a view where they're trying to learn and they're open to even having a conversation, then I just try my best to reason with them and come with empathy and be like, okay, I understand where you come from. I understand the propaganda you learned, and I understand who told you it, and let me inform you about the truth. and how the truth will actually make us all better. And I love doing that because I have a regular job. I work with working class people, and people like us are the ones that are most affected, not only by the propaganda but by the laws we're also, we're affected by. So telling them how they can benefit from learning true history always works for me. So I try to best to make sure we all can benefit from learning and getting rid of ignorance. So.
Thank you.
So I don't know if I can offer anything original. I love that idea about, I try to figure out meeting people where they are, and also that radical acceptance and curiosity. So really believing that we are all every single day doing the best that we can, and that even if and it happens often, the more we are in the soup of oppression, the more we get indoctrinated by the soup of oppression. And if you don't have other perspectives or opportunities to see the world bigger, you just you get very comfortable in your bubble of opinions. And so I'm aware of that, and I'm also aware, this is to me one of the advantages of knowing history, about the benefits and costs and the sort of social structures that exist that keep us in our bubbles and that make it feel unsafe for people to be curious and to be open to having challenging conversations. You've got to stay sort of emotionally regulated, and you've got to have capacity. And it's nice to have a wellness plan because you got to be sleeping well and eating right, and all of those kind of foundational things increase our capacity to be in relationship with each other. And I'm aware that there are policies, procedures, and practices that stop us from being well, that kind of reinforce our fragmentation and our inability to be in community, to have complex conversations. And so I'm going to make that simple. If I am, what I've experienced is sometimes people who don't want to talk about race or difference or differing abilities, who believe like that if we see each other's shared humanity, that some people win and some people lose. I get where that comes from, and I get the structures of where it comes from. And I don't have to try to convince you that there's a right or a wrong. What I do feel that sometimes just being with you in those spaces, opening up the possibility, having the conversation, being curious without you feeling rejected, defending, creating this aggressive feedback loop, just having those experiences really help create a different opportunity. So then we can have another conversation and another conversation. But if we have a conversation and it feels hostile, violent, uninviting, then why am I going to come back to that space, right? So I'm going to just shut it down. Instead, like, let's just be curious and realize that there's a method to the madness. Just kind of small thing, I love working with rural communities, particularly rural communities that have faith-based orientation. I went to seminary, so it's one of my loves. And I love being in majority rural white congregations and really kind of having them reflect on their history. And in central Illinois especially, many congregations will tell you in their communities that they started because of World War II or wars, started changing names, started giving up traditions, started giving up cultural values. And so no one talked about it. It just became what it meant to settle in the Midwest. And as you can imagine, the nervous system gets dysregulated when other people come into your community who want to keep their language, their culture, their traditions, and you feel threatened, like how dare they keep something that we had to give up? Because when you give up culture, language, tradition, values, you lose things that help make you resilient. You lose protective factors. You change religious factors, a lot of things that are grounding. And so when you know that, you're like, I get it, right? And how is it that we sit together and grieve, the loss of what so many people have had to give up consciously and unconsciously. And I know it's hard to see that there are losers on every side of oppression. And to say, how do we then create opportunities for you to reclaim and reinvite and celebrate and maybe talk to a grandparent if they're still alive to see maybe what language existed or what food. There might be a dish that you've always had at a holiday and you don't even realize that it has a cultural and ethnic tradition. So how do we reclaim our mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers' gardens so that we can really celebrate our own? And I think if we can get to the place where we realize that we've all been in this journey together and there's so much that we can get back, I think that there's more space for conversation.
Thank you.
For me, I say it has to do with the acceptance and tolerance. We all learn through association. So the more times, even if you hear the same thing over and over from different panel members, you're going to hear it in a different way. So if you're tolerant to continue to hear the same story over and over, you may hear it in a way that strikes a chord with you. So being willing to subject yourself when you think you know something, hearing it another way from someone else. You know, if you've ever bought a pack of screwdrivers and you've got a big Phillips head and then you've got one that could handle this screw in these glasses. Without the one that can handle the screw in these glasses, you don't really have the tools that you need. Even though you have a Phillips screwdriver and even though you know how to use it, you don't have the right size for this situation. And so sometimes we think we have what we need, and so we cut people off and we're not listening anymore. Sometimes, like I said, we come with an agenda, and I'm going to tell you and I'm going to fix you. And I don't know everybody else's faith, but I believe in God, and only Jesus can change people. So for us to enter into conversations, sometimes we think that we're going to change somebody's mind or we're going to change, and really what we need to do is just learn people, because we're talking about racism, and it's something that was created. It was something that was created. So the longer we keep talking about it and we put somebody on a different side, and when we talk about, I'm going to fill them out for where they're at, well, I'm filling them out for where they're at. And if some ignorance is showing through, and then you start to talk to them in a way that there's maybe condescending, that's passive aggressive, you don't know you're doing it, and they're picking up on cues too, because everything's not words that we say. Sometimes it's body language, it's our eye contact, it's different things that they're picking up from us too. And then they're picking up that, oh, maybe I'm getting a little agitated and I'm trying to beat them up with the truth or their own ignorance. So we have to be willing to be tolerant, and sometimes it takes time. I could tell a quick story too. I've got one of my best friends in Quincy. He's a white man, was married, he had 3 children with his wife, got divorced. He had a child with a black officer. And when the Trayvon Martin situation hit, his son Lucas was about 10 years old. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, hey, Keith, man, I said, listen, you're going to have to talk to Lucas and explain to him about, when he's dealing with police officers and, I'm going through this whole thing. And my buddy looked at me and said, man, I can't believe you. And I said, believe what? And he's like, man, I can't even look at you. Are you trying to say that I don't love my black son the way I love my white sons? I said, no, that ain't what I said, Keith. And he said, yeah, it is. And he just read me the riot act, and he's upset. Now, we like this. And he heard a certain thing, a particular thing. And it wasn't until years later, when the son was 16, full beard, walking around, he called me crying. And he asked me, could I come to his house? And I said, I'll be out. So I get there. And I'm like, man, what's up? And he says, well, he said, Dayton, Kenya, I got accustomed to going around and being looked at funny because I'm walking around with a black woman. He said, I also got accustomed to people looking at me funny because I'm walking around with a black son. He said, but we were in Boone, Iowa at the races, and my dad sent my son to the concession stand with some money. Whew, if I could say this without crying. And he said, I never seen people look at my son and treat him the way they did while he wasn't with him. He said, excuse my language, I'm just going to repeat it. He said, it scared the shit out of me, and now I understand what you was talking about. So if I would have dismissed him in that moment, because we weren't understanding or clicking, or some of this was going on. You know, he hadn't heard what I said or didn't associate the words that I said to him with what I was meaning. You know, a friendship could have split up. And it took 6 years for that point to come back around. So if we're not tolerant and understand that sometimes, you know, there's bamboo that you can plant. It takes 7 years before anything even breaks the surface because it's building its root structure. So understand that these conversations, sometimes you are the seed planter, you're the waterer, and sometimes we're trying to be the harvester of the message that we present. So just understand, you may not be the one who gets to harvest that information. Like when they say, I'm gonna plant a tree that I'll never sit under the shade of. You know, sometimes we have to understand that our words are planting seeds. So just be tolerant and patient and understand that it takes time for people to associate, and it takes time, you know, for new behaviors. If you've ever trained a dog or a horse or anything like that, you understand it takes time to see behaviors change, but we want to have a conversation and we want people to change right then before we leave the meeting. So just understand it takes time, tolerance, and patience.
Thank you. So I believe we're coming up to the end of our panel, but I believe we may have time for one more last question. So I'll leave us off with this. So how can we begin to take the history of Juneteenth and communicate it to people to really, I guess, use the energy of liberation and begin to communicate that with everyone that, you know, we may not see eye to eye with, we may not understand, and use that history to, I don't know, work toward a better understanding of one another.
As a conference, it's going to take it's a conference, if I'm honest, to begin talking about that, just because there's so many messages about the history of Juneteenth that is not a shared understanding. There's so many messages about liberation that is not a shared understanding. So it's like a whole conference on dissecting it, and then it's implementation connected to legislation and policies that just completely have to be uprooted because it's connected to beliefs, values, and a part of the fabric of this culture that we call American culture. So if I'm honest, I will say it will take a conference to begin to get a clear and shared understanding. And if it starts with me and my own understanding and just sitting with the history of it, that's, Karen said earlier, that's messy, that it was never linear. It always went around the way, and there's even an entire continent that we do not even have the history from on even how it even got here. That is just not communicated always clear. And so oftentimes you have to go back and visit spaces of origin to just kind of even sit with the presence of it, the spirit behind it, and what it was. So just kind of giving yourself space to just sit with history, acknowledging and not necessarily take any action or do anything with it, but just sit with it, embody it, and then decide, how will I live with this?
Thank you.
If I had to put it quickly, I would want Juneteenth to be looked at, in the liberation of Juneteenth, to be looked at as progress. And I want, if I were talking to anyone, whether they know history or not, I want them to know that it's the reason why we came this far. It's the reason why, you know, Juneteenth was a liberation. There's a reason why our laws are evolved to what we are now. There's a reason why people evolved to what we are now, why we believe what we believe as a country, and why we're more powerful when we become unified. I want that to be the main point of the subject because like she said, the amount of history that is lost is astounding. There's so many things we don't know. So I want the things that they do know to be that there's a reason why the past is the past. And even though there might be some people trying to make the past come back, the future of us being unified and becoming together will always be stronger, smarter, and just simply better for all of us if we stay on that route. And I don't think it's worth to try to split back apart when we made this much progress. And Juneteenth is a reminder to keep going with the progress no matter what happened on the outside world. We could stay as a community and stay unified, and that's what makes us great as in our country. So keep that going.
Thank you.
So I'm sitting here and I'm feeling something, so I'm going to just answer it more transparent. When I think about what Juneteenth is, and even how we talk about it, I think sometimes when we're trying to think about historical and intergenerational trauma, we want to skip steps. We want to go from acknowledging the pain to like healing and liberation and celebration. And from my experience, we never really have had opportunities to grieve the loss and to acknowledge that literally what we're talking about was that people were in slavery in this country for 300 plus years. And as a part of that, some people in Texas were freed, but then we went into Reconstruction, and many Black-owned towns, cities, government leaders, businesses were destroyed as a part of Reconstruction. And the reason why most Black-bodied people settled in the Midwest was because a lot of the South became so violent that Black people couldn't live there. We don't sit with the truth of that. And until we can sit with the truth of that, I think it's hard. And I know, and people who've heard me talk about my DNA, and I was talking about with my daughter, it came up where 15% of my ancestry is Scottish and Irish. None of that was consensual. It couldn't have been consensual because people owned my people, and my people couldn't consent to the sexual violence that happened. And again, if we can't sit with the acknowledgement that so much of what we're talking about came out of a lot of pain, and how do we sit with it, both with ourselves, right, to like look at what we think is beautiful or aesthetically pleasing. Much of that comes from our racialized violence in history. And what it would cost to be a plantation owner. Well, first of all, just acknowledge that most white-bodied people in the South were not plantation owners. They were poor and working class and indigenous and didn't have access to wealth and capital and were given things a little bit that looked like whiteness just to kind of maintain the status quo, but they really were exploited too. Imagine us being in a room and saying, yeah, this is a messy history. And acknowledging, right, the historical and how it shows up every single day. Like, there's not a single day that we're not kind of walking in this pain. And I think we need to do some collective grieving practices, conversations just about the loss. Because then we can get to the celebration and happiness. But it's like any wound. If you don't go in and clean it out, I feel like that's why we keep coming back here, because you can't deal with the healing and possibility if the mess is still there. But we got to sit in the mess. And, you know, we're still fighting the Civil War because we didn't heal from the Civil War, and we didn't acknowledge the pain of the Civil War. And so, and that, right, is messy. But I don't know what that looks like. It's part of my fantasy world, is that we'd be able to come together in community to really be in community together around this pain so that we can come on the other side, so we don't have to keep repeating this cycle, because it gets messier and messy, like every disease. Like if you think about diabetes and a wound, if you don't ever excavate it, you keep losing limbs, and you start off with the toe, and next thing you've lost a leg, and then I'm dying because of sickness. So let's end the sickness of racism.
Thank you.
Man, I really wish I wasn't following her. My ancestors, my people. I was raised in Minnesota. My grandma came over. They're Nigerian, they're Liberian. Classed in a group of white people who did talking about the healing. Sometimes we and talk about that. We still
Chief, is your mic on?
I'm sorry. She told me that when you try to make things fair, sometimes you just make it more unfair. And so it was almost like a suck it up, buttercup. You know, even the Amish give their youth an opportunity to change or denounce if you don't want this. So sometimes we're trying to force Juneteenth on people. I like the 4th of July. I'm just being honest. I didn't learn about Juneteenth till I was in my 40s. So can I tell my truth and it be okay in the black community as well? Not that I don't care about Juneteenth. I understand the importance of it. But we keep trying to go back to the pain, and it's like, no, I don't want my kids to keep reliving my pain. I went through it. Let's get past it. We're past that. Let's celebrate and let's move on. And so sometimes we want to be stuck there because we're talking about the history of a few political figures who created all this. Because when you really dig into people's history, Tom started us out with an experiment. Get to know the person that you don't know. And boy, what did we find out about each other? Because when we do that, those are the things that endear us to people. When you find out that Chris Rock said it best one time. He said, my best friend was a white kid. He said, because taking common ass whoopings is something that makes you friends together. So when you start learning that we had common pains, common sores, then it gets easier to heal with each other because I'm not throwing my pain on you like you did this. And I'll just kind of end with this. When fire chiefs used to want to get new fire trucks, we would, put pictures of the burned babies and the different things up there, and we pulling at the heartstrings. That only works for a little while. People get desensitized, and then they want to know information. They want to know history. They want to know those things. And so we have to understand, she said it takes conference, and I believe that as well because, like I was saying earlier, if we don't talk about where we're going to go, I think we just need to pick some things. Hey, this year's Juneteenth, what we're going to try to do is this. And if we can agree on that, we move forward with it, in a democratic society. We want things to be the same all over the country. And this is going to be, I'm about to really, like I said, blow the table up. We're okay with neighborhood associations, people who want to live a certain way. Why can't we do that? The people who want to have reparations, all that in this state, and they're doing it. We're not doing it in this state, and you want reparations, you can't live in Illinois if we're not doing those things. Because we give home rule to cities. There's so much red tape and different things to get through that, we don't even understand that what we're asking for we can't do here. But I see it over there. Well, not here, so you got to go over there. And we've made segregation a bad thing, you know, when I'm not saying with like the purposeful putting there, but I'm saying at times with, you know, in a food truck line, you know, there's pastries over here, there's chicken over here, there's tacos over here. Sometimes you have to get in where you fit in and go get fed where you need to be fed. And it's unlike kindergarten. Sometimes we want to take a room like this and we want to talk about concepts that some people are just kindergarten level. And that's okay. My intellect or my ignorance won't allow me to really commit to this conversation. So maybe we need a kindergarten class and understand that some people just need to learn some things first before they can contribute in the changing manner that we want. You know, every baby doesn't start off eating a Big Mac. You know, they're on Similac and formula, mama's milk first. And we have to understand that sometimes the individuals we're talking to can't digest what you just left out. And, you know, we put out a hell of a platter of food, and they're lactose intolerant, and we're trying to give them milk. So just understand that sometimes people don't care, and we try to make them care. Or sometimes, you know, people can't absorb or digest what we've given them. And some people got food allergies, just like they got history allergies and different things. So I'm just trying to bring a little comedic, you know, buzz to it, but I'm also being serious. We have to be able to have real talks. I heard someone up here say people have to be able to be themselves. I got to be able to say that and be okay. I could tell you Chief Boone jumped on me because I told him I can't. I keep turning my mic off. How that raises eyebrows, and he looked at me and said, "Boy, that's the Black National Anthem." I said, "I don't care. I can't stand the cadence of the song. It's beautiful if a choir sings it, but let us all try to join in and sing it. That song is disconjointed with it. That's how I feel. I need to be able to say that, and still we be okay, and you want to sit next to me and we have a conversation. Because if I can't do that, then we can't progress, and we have to be able to listen to whatever kind of craziness is going to spill out of anyone's mouth if you invite me to the dance and want me to participate. Because if we can't do that, then I'm going to talk about y'all, say some stuff about y'all, and take myself and go on about my own business. So, and I just mean that. And so I'm just saying, if we say we want these things, you know, we say we want DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So we're going to bring all these people together that are all different and then have all these strict rules about how you can't offend somebody. Come on, man. That's not how this works. We're about to offend. All day long there's going to be offense. And if we can't laugh at it, be tolerant, educate, and wait maybe 6 years before it sinks in for somebody, we can't progress as a people, as a nation, and get the things we want. So I'm done.
All right, well, that brings us to an end of this panel. Thank you, everyone, for participating and sharing your perspectives on Juneteenth. Thank you, Chandra. Thank you, Moe. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Chief Dade. And, yeah, thank you for joining us, everyone. Let's give them a round of applause.